Sitting up in bed, his cheeks still flushed with heat, but his fever, like the Kandust egg, finally receding, Bill had finished the book. But when George reached for it, Bill held out of reach. "Now give me the paraffin." "What's that? Where is it?" "It's on the cellar shelf, just as you go downstairs," Bill said, "in a box that says Gulf. Bring that to me, and a knife, and a bowl, and a pack of matches." George had gone obediently to get these things. He could hear his mother playing the piano, not for Elise now, but something else he didn't like so well, something that sounded dry and fussy. He could hear the rain flicking steadily against the kitchen windows. These were comfortable sounds, but the thought of the cellar was not a bit comfortable. He did not like the cellar, and he did not like going down the cellar stairs, because he always imagined there was something down there in the dark. That was silly, of course. His father said so, and his mother said so, and even more important, Bill said so. But still, he did not even like opening the door to flick on the light, because he always had the idea this was so exquisitely stupid he didn't dare tell anyone. But while he was feeling for the light switch, some horrible clawed paw would settle lightly over his wrist and then jerk him down into the darkness that smelled of dirt and wet and dim rotted vegetables. Stupid. There were no things with claws, all hairy and full of killing spite. Every now and then someone went crazy and killed a lot of people. Sometimes Chet Huntley told about such things on the evening news, and of course there were commies. But there was no weirdo monster living down in their cellar. Still, this idea lingered. In those interminable moments, while he was groping for the switch with his right hand, his left arm curled round the door jamb in death grip, that cellar smell seemed to intensify until it filled the world. Smells of dirt and wet and long-gone vegetables would merge into one unmistakable, ineluctable smell, the smell of the monster, the apotheosis of all monsters. It was the smell of something for which he had no name, the smell of it. Crouched and lurking and ready to spring, a creature which would eat anything but was especially hungry for boy meat. He opened the door that morning, had groped interminably for the switch, holding the jamb in his usual death grip, his eyes squinched shut, the tip of his tongue poked from the corner of his mouth like an agonized rootlet searching for water in a place of drought. "Funny? Sure, you betcha. Look at you, Georgie. Georgie's scared of the dark. What a baby!" The sound of the piano came from what his father called the living room and his mother called the parlor. It sounded like music from another world, far away, the way talk and laughter on a summer-crowded beach must sound to an exhausted swimmer who struggles with the undertow. His fingers found the switch. He snapped it, and nothing. Oh, cripes, the power! George snatched his arm back as if from a basket filled with snakes. He stepped back from the open cellar door, his heart hurrying in his chest. The power was out. Of course he'd forgotten the power was out. Jeezly Crow! What now? Go back and tell Bill he couldn't get the box of paraffin because the power was out, and he was afraid that something might get him as he stood on the cellar stair, something that wasn't a commie or a mass murderer, but a creature much worse than either? That it would simply slither part of its rotted self up between the stair risers and grab his ankle? That would go over big, wouldn't it? Others might laugh at such fancy, but Bill wouldn't laugh. Bill would be mad. Bill would say, "Grow up, Georgie. Do you want this boat or not?" As if this thought were his cue, Bill called from the bedroom, "Did you die out there, Georgie?" "No, I'm getting it, Bill," George called back at once. He rubbed at his arms, trying to make the guilty goose flesh disappear and be smooth skin again. "I just stopped to get a drink of water." "Well, hurry up." So he walked down the 4 steps to the cellar shelf, his heart a warm beating hammer in his throat, his hair on the nape of his neck standing at attention, his eyes hot, his hands cold, sure that at any moment the cellar door would swing shut on its own, closing off the white light falling through the kitchen windows, and he would hear it something worse than all the commies and murders in the world, worse than the Japs, worse than Attila the Hun, worse than the somethings in 100 horror movies. It growling deeply. He would hear the growl, the lunatic second before it pounced on him and unzipped his guts. The summer smell was worse than ever today because of the flood. Their house was high on Witcham Street near the crest of the hill, and they'd escaped the worst of it, but there was still standing water down where they'd seeped in through the old rock foundations. The smell was low and unpleasant, making him want to take only the shallowest breaths. George sifted through the junk on the shelf as fast as he could. 2 old cans of kiwi shoe polish and shoe polish rags, a broken kerosene lamp, 2 mostly empty bottles of Windex, an old flat can of turtle wax. For some reason, this can struck him, and he spent nearly 30 seconds looking at the turtle on the lid with a kind of hypnotic wonder. When he tossed it back, here it was at last, a square box with the word golf on it. George snatched it and ran up the stairs as fast as he could, suddenly aware that his shirt tail was out, and suddenly sure that his shirt tail would be his undoing. The thing in the cellar would allow him to get almost all the way out, and then grab the tail of his shirt and snatch him back. And he reached the kitchen and swept the door shut behind him, banged gustily. He leaned back against it, with his eyes closed. Sweat popped out on his arms and forehead. The box of paraffin gripped tightly in one hand. The piano had come to a stop, and his mother's voice floated in. "Georgie, can't you slam that door a little harder next time? Maybe you could break some of the plates in the Welsh dresser, if you really tried." "Sorry, Mom," he called back. "Georgie, you waste," Bill said from the bedroom. He pitched his voice low so their mother would not hear. Georgie snickered a little. His fear was already gone. It had slipped away from him as easily as nightmare slips away from a man who awakes, cold skin and gasping, from its grip, who feels his body and stares at his surroundings to make sure that none of it ever happened, and who then begins at once to forget it. Half is gone by the time his feet hit the floor, 3/4 of it by the time he emerges from the shower and begins to towel off, all of it by the time he finishes his breakfast. All gone until the next time, when, in the grip of the nightmare, how fierce he remembered. That turtle, George thought, going to the counter drawer where the matches were kept. Where did I see a turtle like that before? But no answer came, and he dismissed the question. He got a pack of matches from the drawer, a knife from the rack, holding the sharp edge studiously away from his body as his dad had taught him, and a small bowl from the Welsh dresser in the dining room. He went back into George's room, into Bill's room. "What an a-hole you are, Georgie," Bill said amiably enough, and pushed back some of the thick stuff on his night table. An empty glass, a pitcher of water, Kleenex, books, a bottle of Vicks Vapor Rub, the smell of which Bill would associate all his life with thick, phlegmy chests and snotty noses. The old Philco radio was there too, playing not Chopin or Bach, but a Little Richard tune, and very softly, however, so softly that Little Richard was robbed of all his raw and elemental power. Their mother, who had studied classical piano at Juilliard, hated rock and roll. She did not merely dislike it, she abominated it. "I'm no a-hole," George said, sitting at the edge of Bill's bed and putting all the things he'd gathered on the night table. "Yes, you are," Bill said. "Nothing but a big brown a-hole. That's you." George tried to imagine a kid who was nothing but a great big a-hole on legs and began to giggle. "Your a-hole's bigger than Augusta," Bill said, beginning to giggle too. "Your a-hole's bigger than the whole state," George replied. This broke both boys up for nearly 2 minutes. There followed a whispered conversation of the sorts which mean very little to anyone save small boys, accusations of who was the biggest a-hole, who had the biggest a-hole, which a-hole was the brownest, and so on. Finally, Bill said one of the forbidden words. He accused Georgie of being a big, brown, shitty a-hole, and they both got laughing hard. Bill's laughter turned into a coughing fit. As it finally began to taper off, by then Bill's face had gone a plummy shade which George regarded with some alarm. The piano stopped again. They both looked in the direction of the parlor, listening for the piano bench to scrape back, listening for their mother's impatient footsteps. Bill buried his mouth in the crook of his elbow, stifling the last of the coughs, pointing at the pitcher at the same time. George poured him a glass of water, which he drank off. The piano began once more, for Elise again. The stuttering Bill had never forgot that piece. And even many years later it never failed to bring the gooseflesh to his arms and his back. His heart would drop and he would remember. My mother was playing that day Georgie died. You gonna cough any more, Bill? No. Bill pulled a Kleenex from the box, made a rumbling sound in his chest, spat phlegm into the tissue, screwed it up, and tossed it into the wastebasket by his bed, which was filled with similar twists of tissue. Then he opened his box of paraffin and dropped the waxed cube of the stuff into his palm. George watched him closely, but without speaking or questioning. Bill didn't like George talking to him while he did stuff, but George had learned that if he just kept his mouth shut, Bill would usually explain what he was doing. Bill used the knife, cut off a small piece of paraffin cube, put the piece in the bowl, then struck a match and put it on top of the paraffin. The two boys watched the small yellow flame as the dying wind drove rain against the window in occasional splatters. Got to waterproof the boat or it'll just get wet and sink, Bill said. When he was with George, his stutter was light. Sometimes he didn't stutter at all. In school, however, it could become so bad that talking became impossible for him. Communication would cease, and Bill's schoolmates would look somewhere else while Bill clutched the sides of his desk, his face growing almost red as his hair, his eyes squeezed into slits as he tried to winch some word out of his stubborn throat. Sometimes, most times, the word would come. Other times it simply refused. He'd been hit by a car when he was 3 and knocked into the side of a building. He'd remained unconscious for 7 hours. Mom said it was that accident which had caused the stutter. He sometimes got the feeling that his dad, and even Bill himself, was not so sure. The piece of paraffin in the bowl was almost entirely melted. The match flame fluttered lower, glowing blue as it hugged the cardboard stick, and then it went out. Bill dipped his finger into the liquid, jerked it out with a faint hiss, smiled apologetically at George. Hot, he said. After a few seconds, he dipped his finger in again and began to smear the wax along the sides of the boat, where it quickly dried to a milky haze. Can I do some? George asked. Okay, just don't get any on the blankets or Mom will kill you. George dipped his finger into the paraffin, which was now very warm but no longer hot, and began to spread it along the other side of the boat. Don't put on so much, you a-hole, Bill said. You want to sink it on its maiden cruise? Sorry. It's all right. Just go easy. George finished the other side and then held the boat in his hands. It puffed a little heavier, but not too much. Too cool, he said. I'm going to go out and sail it. Yeah, you do that, Bill said. He suddenly looked tired and still not very well. I wish you could come, George said. He really did. Bill sometimes got bossy after a while, but he always had the coolest ideas, and he hardly ever hit. It's your boat, really. She, Bill said. You call boats she. She, then. I wish I could come too, Bill said glumly. Well, George shifted from one foot to the other, the boat in his hand. You put on your rain stuff, Bill said, or you'll wind up with a flu like me. Probably catch it anyway from my germs. Thanks, Bill. It's a neat boat. Did something he hadn't done for a long time, something Bill never forgot. He leaned over and kissed his brother on the cheek. You'll catch it for sure now, you a-hole, Bill said, but he seemed cheered up all the same. He smiled at George. Put all the stuff back, too, or Mom had a bird. Sure. He gathered up the waterproofing equipment, crossed the room, the boat perched precariously on top of the paraffin box, which was sitting askew in the little bowl. Georgie? George turned back to look at his brother. Be careful. Sure. His brow creased a little. That was something your mom said, not your big brother. It was as strange as him giving Bill a kiss. I sure will. And went out. And Bill never saw it.